Welcome to the Wednesday evening edition of the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thank you if you're watching on Facebook Live or over on my YouTube channel. You can subscribe to my new YouTube channel, the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Just search that on the YouTube and you'll find it. And I would love for you to subscribe to that. Welcome again. It's a Wednesday evening. Been a busy week here at our household, and we're going to break down the dreaded Steelers versus our wonderful Cleveland Browns game on Sunday. We'll talk even a little bit more on Friday as well, but we're going to break that down, kind of look at some stats tonight. And also, if it weren't for the Steelers, and I loathe the Steelers, I really like Pittsburgh, the city itself. So we're going to talk at the end of the broadcast some of my favorite things of Pittsburgh. Yes, I know it's hard for all of you. I know this is a Cleveland podcast, but the city itself isn't so bad. And we'll get into that toward the end of the show. So, little bit of history too before we get into the stats. With Pittsburgh, I have in-laws now that are very, very big Pittsburgh fans. So when I got married again 2 summers ago, that we had a very entertaining, fun time during the wedding, the after party, where I was asked to my brother-in-laws tried to give me a Pittsburgh Steeler jersey to put on during the reception, which I did not do because I had my half of the family who are diehard Browns fans, as everyone should be. And even though I was challenged to wear the Steeler jersey, I fought hard against that temptation, and I did not do it. But and for all of you Baltimore Ravens fans, I talked to saw a comment earlier on my social media feed there are some folks out there who might even be Ravens fans who, they were wondering who should they root for. Well, of course you need to root for the Browns. The Ravens used to be the Browns, so you got to root for the Browns. Okay, there you go. All right, so there was a question yesterday in another social platform, radio station up in Cleveland, and they were asking about public enemy number one. Would it either have been John Elway or Big Ben Roethlisberger currently? Now, John Elway was a former quarterback for the dreaded Denver Broncos. And when that question was posed, I responded to that by automatically, any diehard, longtime Browns fan knows automatically that the public enemy number one of any Browns fan is the hated, dreadful person who ruined my childhood, John Elway. Hands down. It's not even a contest. Now, Big Ben, he's had quite a series against the Browns over the last decade, and quite a great record against the Browns. I was doing some research on his statistics. What was really humiliating as a Browns fan is to find out that Big Ben used to have more wins at First Energy Stadium than any Cleveland Brown quarterback that the Browns would bring in over the years. Pretty much because the Browns ran through 29,000 quarterbacks. Big Ben at one point, I think, had 10 wins at First Energy Stadium. So I believe Baker Mayfield this past week, with the win that the Browns had over the Colts, did finally surpass Ben Roethlisberger's most wins in First Energy Stadium. So thank goodness that we broke that very embarrassing record. So yes, so the answer to the public enemy number one is John Elway, because he ruined my childhood, but Big Ben currently is the enemy. Many the younger generation has never really seen what the Browns and the Steelers, this matchup and this series is all about. They've never seen the Browns really win with any sort of consistency. The Browns have not won in Heinz Field in Pittsburgh in the last 17 years. Oh, that's pretty pathetic. I think they're 1-19 since coming back in 1999, the Browns did. Just awful statistics. The Browns have won about 4 or 5 games in Cleveland over that span, which I happen to have gone to a game with my son, Alec, who's been on the show a few times. We went to the game in 2012. That year, the Browns won a ugly no offense show where the Browns had just drafted the rookie Trent Richardson, and they hung on to win 13-6 in that game. Richardson had a late touchdown in that game, and was one of the few times that we've seen the Browns beat the Steelers over this span. So the Browns have a lot to prove. This is a big game, obviously, for both groups, but again, this game can't be, emphasized enough. Now, there's a long season ahead, but to accomplish what the Browns have been doing over the last couple of weeks, they go down to Dallas, and I know Dallas is struggling. They've just lost their quarterback too. Hopefully he will have a speedy recovery. The Browns need this win big time. So that has me a little bit leery going into Sunday, because I think the pressure is kind of falling back on Cleveland. Now, you got Stefanski, the head coach, who, by the way, has 4 wins now. That's more than the late, great Hugh Jackson, who had a 3-36-1 record. By the way, Hugh Jackson just came out over the weekend, or he was on some sports show or podcast, and he talked about his regret about going to Cleveland after having been in Cincinnati all those years and being successful supposedly on the offensive side of things. And of course, he went to the blame game and said, well, 2016, 2017, look at the rosters that I had in Cleveland. I mean, how are we going to win like that? Oh, I'm sorry. You don't go 1-15 and 0-16. Yeah, you had a lot of rookies. And yes, Terrell Pryor had 1,000 yards as a receiver, but no head coach in the NFL should go 0-16 and 1-15. So blaming it on your talent that you had a hand in drafting is just beyond ridiculous. I do not understand Hugh Jackson at all. I've seen him enough. I've listened to him enough over the years. He's not a very good coach. He's a good talker, but that was about it. So just ridiculous comments after the fact. It's very easy, but his career has been ruined because of what happened. Obviously, he should be blamed for that. But all right, getting back to the Browns and the Steelers. That made me angry though earlier in the week when I saw that in his comments. So we're talking about how this, younger people today, they have not seen this series and when it was really great. And that was during our childhood. There was a run in the late 80s where from 1986 to 1989, the Browns were undefeated, 7-0 over the Steelers. That at the end of that, the last win they had in 89 was the first game of the 89 season in September. They won that game 51-0. Bud Carson was the head coach, and that was the last time they won at Three Rivers. Back then, it was 51-0, just trounced the Steelers. But prior to this whole stretch, after that stretch, the Browns have not had any luck against the Steelers. So any of these young people that are under the age of 25, 30, they've never seen the Browns have any success against the Steelers. So why would you have a rivalry? Why would you think it's a rivalry? So I understand that. Hopefully the Browns, with this new coaching and their staff, can really start continue to turn things around. It's interesting today that Stefanski was interviewed, and the coach from the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, had forgotten that the two of them worked together with the Minnesota Vikings, along with several of the other coaches on both ends of the field. So it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out on Sunday. It sounded like Mike Tomlin sounded very excited today when he was interviewed about the game. Usually he's kind of rough and gruff and just sort of, goes about his thing. But today he was very upbeat. So we'll see where that leads this game. I think it's going to be very physical, like a lot of folks are saying. And hopefully we can start another rivalry, because I'm tired of losing watching as a fan. This is another one of those big steps for the Browns, man. If they come out of this with a big win, and by the way, I gave the Steelers last time we talked about this an extra victory. They are only 4-0. They're not 5-0. So they'll be 4-1 after they lose to the Browns on Sunday. I had forgotten that they had that game that got postponed because I think they were supposed to play the Titans. The Titans were done for the last 2 weeks or so because of COVID. They did come back. The Titans did, after all that long stretch of not playing. They played the Buffalo Bills last night and destroyed them. Derrick Henry was a beast and ran all, over the place, and had a very successful game. The Tennessee Titans are looking as strong as ever. Hopefully they'll continue to stay healthy. So back to the Browns and the Steelers. It's going to come down to similarly to last week's game when the Browns played the Colts. The Browns offense is very good this year. The Steelers offense is so. I'll just give you some stats here. The Browns have run a total of 333 plays over this last season. To this point, Steelers have run 271. So that's a substantial difference. 60 plus extra plays that the Browns have had help. They've controlled the tempo of the game. They've controlled the clock. Rushing first downs, this really stood out. And if you look at this offensively from a stats point, this is significant. The number of rushes on first down, the Browns lead the league on rushes on first down. They have 49. The Steelers only have 26. So they have 49 first downs rushing. Steelers only have 26. Total yards this year, the Steelers have 942 yards. Steelers only have 555 yards rushing. Both teams are decent, with that Browns average of 5.5 average. The Steelers at 4.5. Browns have more touchdowns in the rushing game at 8. The Steelers only have 7. So, and as far as those runs that are 20 plus, like the run that we had with Dearness Johnson, where Rashid Higgins had a great block to finish that game. The Browns have 12 of those, and the Steelers only have 7 of those long runs. So defensively is where, the Steelers again are very strong. And they're just as strong probably as the Colts, if not better on the rushing side of the defense there. The Browns in their secondary have given up almost 1,500 yards. The Steelers have only given up 950 yards. Both teams have 6 interceptions. And really significant difference here for the Steelers. They've got 20 sacks already on the season, and the Browns only have 12. You look at the Steelers, they're undefeated, but again, we talk about the Browns not playing anybody. Well, the Steelers really haven't played squat either. They started the season off against the Giants. Then they played Philly. They crushed Carson Wentz. I think he had like 10 sacks or something. That's where they got all their sacks. And then they went out to Denver. They got a lead against the Broncos, and then the Broncos came back late, but Pittsburgh held on. And then they played the dreaded Texans right before Bill O'Brien got fired by the Texans. So, you look at that, and, Steelers can say, they've played some, but they really haven't. The Browns opponents have many more victories than the Steelers at this point. So that those things will all add up. I think it's going to be a close game. The last couple games in Pittsburgh, if you go back and look at the record-wise and the game situations, they've been relatively close where the Browns have had opportunities and have not capitalized. I think Baker threw a late interception. Was it, I think, last year's game in Three Rivers? Last year, and then the other part of this, let's talk about, somebody like Myles Garrett. If you remember, Myles Garrett in that game in November of last year in Cleveland was the game that Myles Garrett lost control because he was being antagonized by the Steeler players and went after the quarterback at that time, and right at the end of the game swung his helmet, and he was then suspended for the remaining part of the season. The Browns did win that game pretty well, 21-7. In that game, the Browns defense also had 4 interceptions. So this year's team, just as much as last year's team, this year's team is stepping up. They had multiple interceptions again this last week. Ronnie Harrison, now Ronnie Harrison had a concussion after he got that interception. So I don't know if he'll be playing on Sunday, but Red Wine came in and got another interception. So if the Browns can get a few picks off Big Ben, and I think they will, because Big Ben does that routinely. He will throw a pick or two. What the Browns can do with that after they get the interception, can they score points? Can they get more than just 3 points? Can they get touchdowns? And the Browns this year have been doing that. They're averaging, their last 4 games, they've been over 30 points. They again scored 32 last week, which is amazing. The last time, again, the Browns were 4-1 was back in 94. And that year, the Browns ended up 11-5. Interestingly, in that season, 2 of the 5 losses were to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ugh, hate that team. Ugh, can you tell? I hope you do too if you're a Browns fan. But I like the town. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So, when you look down at, some of the specific players, last week, Chase Claypool for the Steelers, kid out of Notre Dame, rookie, had a great game. They're going to be, he had coming off that game. You can see the Brown, that could be, Ben's go-to. I have a feeling Big Ben's going to try and find the tight ends. That's always good against the Browns, kind of loosey-goosey backside of their secondary. James Conner, their running back, Schnell, these guys can run. Conner's had 2 games this past season already, over 100 yards. So we've got to watch that running game. So those are a couple players again to kind of watch with the Steelers. Roethlisberger so far this year has 10 touchdowns and only 1 interception. I'm gonna say I'll go out on a limb today and say that the Brownies are going to get at least 2 off of Big Ben, because Big Ben gets a little scared, and I think this year the Browns might just do it. Right? All right, so looking here, just a couple more things here on my stat line here. So we'll just see where things are on. We'll see where the injury reports come out on Friday. I'll give you my prediction on Friday as far as a win or a loss, though I'm leaning toward a win for the Browns. And I'll give you that score, but I think it's going to be very, very competitive. I don't think that if Baker can manage the game again like he has continuing to do. And this whole thing about him falling apart or not doing his very best in the second half of these games or the fourth quarter, they had some breakdown. Part of the reason why he's not throwing for 300,000 yards in the fourth quarter is because the Browns are in a winning position and they're running the ball. They're finishing the game off. They had a 28-yard run to finish the game with Dearness Johnson. Baker doesn't have to be throwing the ball all over the field when the Browns have a lead. Now, yes, Baker was 1 for 9 or something like 2 for 9 in the second half of last week's game. Jarvis Landry dropped 2 very easy catchable right there in his hands catches that, would have gone for first downs, which would have changed a lot again in that game. So this idea that Baker somehow is having these great first halves, and then he falls apart, that's not true. So, the way that people try to create a narrative to, put Baker in these certain spots, Baker just needs to manage the game. These bootlegs that he's taken off to the left, I think it's wonderful. I mean, the years past, if you were to, and I've been at the games personally, as a season ticket holder, he'd always just run out to the right all the time. How many times this season have you seen him go bootleg off to the left, play action off to the left? And they're getting points off of that. It's very significant. I think that'll continue to help them, especially this next week. It's going to, the Steelers are going to have a lot of blitzing. The offensive line for the Browns are really going to have to step up. This is a very big game for them. Jared Willis, all these guys, really Teller, they just need to step up, have a good game, help in the run the running game. I think Kareem Hunt will have a good game. Dearness Johnson seems to be stepping up, and we'll hopefully then get Nick Chubb back after the we have our bye coming up too. So, all right. So there you go. A little breakdown of the Browns and the Steelers. It should be a fun game. I'm already getting a little pumped, a little nervous. Even thought about putting a wager out there. Some of my brother-in-law and or my two brother-in-laws who are big Steeler fans. So going back to kind of, we'll finish off here. You know, Pittsburgh, I say a lot of bad things about the Steelers because, you know, the Steelers are just a terrible, awful, you know, they're like the evil empire of football teams. A close second is the Baltimore Ravens, or we call them the Ratbirds, right? So, but getting back to Pittsburgh itself, Pittsburgh is a really cool place. A lot of you, if you've never been to Pittsburgh, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should consider going to Pittsburgh and checking it out. My son, Alec, who's currently a senior over at Hope College in Michigan, when we were looking at colleges, the University of Pittsburgh was very appealing to him with what he was looking at that time to major in. I think he was looking at engineering. So, you know, we went and visited the University of Pittsburgh. We also have a history in my family of family being in Pittsburgh for various reasons. My father is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon and another great university. Duquesne University is there. So on my list of reasons to go to Pittsburgh, one of them is colleges. There are several great universities: University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon, Duquesne, all these great schools in this, this metropolitan area, great arts. All right, next reason, obviously, is the name of the field there in Pittsburgh, the Heinz Company, ketchup. We love ketchup, right? So there you go. Another reason to go to Pittsburgh, if you're from Pittsburgh or know anything about Pittsburgh, you know this sandwich. It's the Primanti Brothers sandwich. Primanti, Primati Brothers Sandwich Shop. It's a great place. The thing that makes it great, they put stack all this meat into these 2 homemade pieces of toast or bread with, they stack then a whole layer of French fries in the middle with coleslaw. It's very unique to Pittsburgh, and anybody from Pittsburgh knows Primanti Brothers. All right, another major reason to like Pittsburgh, Mount Washington and the views when you enter in to Pittsburgh itself. When you travel around the country, Pittsburgh's one of those spots that when you enter the town, it is magnificent. Like there's a tunnel that goes through a mountain and a hill, and you come out of the hill, and it's just Pittsburgh's right there. It's 3 rivers. If you go up on the hill, take the incline that travels you up that hill to Mount Washington and look back, you get some extraordinary views of this beautiful city down there by the river. So finally, the best reason and the best thing about Pittsburgh is the long history with, do you remember this guy? Yes, you do. If you grew up when I did, Mr. Rogers. Yes, they filmed Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is from Pittsburgh. They did that filming for that show for over 30 years. And Tom Hanks, they had the movie out recently. And so that's one of the best reasons and the best things about Pittsburgh is Mr. Rogers. There you go. Hey, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the show. We'll come back to you again later this week, probably Saturday morning for our Saturday morning quarterback, where we'll talk a little bit about the college games coming up. And then we'll dig into a little bit of some predictions of various NFL games, plus the Browns-Pittsburgh outlook again. And until then, I hope you all have a great evening. It's you're halfway through the week. We're almost done. Hey, tomorrow's Thursday, right? All right, everybody, remember to keep smiling. Take care, everybody.